let's continue with Nelson Mandela's long walk to freedom. Yesterday, we discussed that Nelson Mandela shared with us his journey of freedom, his journey of making South Africa purely a democratic republic. The journey in which Nelson Mandela had not walked alone, but there had been the people who had motivated him, who had inspired him. He followed them. Those very people, those very great men, great leaders of South Africa, they contributed, they had sown the seed of freedom, and he nurtured that seed. They had passed away, they had left the soil, but Nelson Mandela carried it forward and made their dream come true as he helped South Africa in becoming completely a democratic country based on non-racial government, and he became the president of that country. Right? Now, while sharing the contribution of those great men, he also talked about the oppression, the atrocities which the whites had inflicted on blacks. On that day of inauguration, he assures the people of South Africa that he would express his utmost sincerity to the people of South Africa, because the people are the greatest asset, the greatest wealth of a nation. South Africa is a very rich country, rich in minerals, rich in stones, precious stones. But he says that nothing is more valuable than its people, than its citizens. If they are there, if they get the right directions, if they are right-minded people, then they would make use of those resources available or provided by a country. If the people are not right-minded people, if they are not dutiful, if they are not patriotic, then they would definitely exhaust or waste those resources. This is what he meant to say here, right? Now, from here we continue. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. This is very, very important passage. Each and every line is very meaningful. So there can be questions from any statement. Okay. Here now he says it is from these comrades. Comrades are actually fellow soldiers. Here these comrades are those very people who had fought for the freedom of South Africa. Just as he had mentioned a few names, Tombe and Sisilus, etc., etc. Right? He says it is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. What is courage? He realized the meaning, he understood the meaning of the word courage when he had worked with these great men, when he followed them, when he joined them in that struggle. Time and again, I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. What we think also as a layman, on the surface meaning of courage, we people consider. We think courage meaning fearless. We think courage meaning to be brave. But he has given an elaborate meaning of courage. He says time and again, there had been situations where men and women, they had risked their lives and they have sacrificed their lives for an idea, for a goal, for a cause. Just as, for example, you see Shahid Bhagat Singh. Now you must be thinking that why I'm giving example from India's freedom struggle. Because their struggle and our struggle was the same. There was not much the difference. And secondly, I think that this way you can understand better, right? Now you see that Bhagat Singh, Chandrasekhar Azad, Bismil, etc. They were all young lads. Why would they risk their lives? Why did they put themselves in the mouth of death? Why did they risk? Why did they go for this adventure that is challenging the whites, challenging the Britishers? Because they had a cause, they had a purpose, and the purpose was to see India independent, to see India free from the clutches of British government. So when there is a purpose, when there is a cause, and you fight for that cause, you fight for that purpose, then you have the courage, you have the confidence to do that. No one instills that. This happens when you have that strong urge to do something, then it happens automatically. It happens naturally. I've seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. He said, I've seen the people standing up to attacks. Standing up to attacks, they protest. They protest against the attacks. They bear, they tolerate the atrocities which are inflicted on them. They are tortured. They bear all these without breaking. They keep on bearing, tolerating all these attacks, all these tortures, humiliations without giving up their spirit. Their spirit does not die. They are lashed, they are tortured, they are humiliated, they are harassed, but they do not give up their spirit. They remain strong and resilient. Resilient meaning they do use their ability to overcome those challenges, overcome those atrocities. And such strength they have that defies the imagination, that defeats. You cannot even imagine what the results are when they have a strong desire to achieve those purposes, strong desire to achieve their goals. So this is a natural feeling in them, a natural energy they get, and they channelize that energy, that they do not give up, and they just fight to fulfill that cause. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Yes, this is very important. Listen, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear. We think that the courage meaning fearlessness. No. He says it is not so that the man who is courageous does not have fear. The man definitely has the fear. But how he overcomes that fear, how he defeats that fear and moves forward, that is called courage. Just as for example, I tell you, you know that what happens? Our Jawans at the border, our Jawans at the time of war, when they have enemies face to face, when they have the enemy standing just opposite to them, they also have the fear of, they are not afraid of their own loss. They have the fear of the loss of their family, loss of their children. They do have that fear. But then that uniform they have put on themselves, that reminds them of their duty. They just put that fear aside. And then they attack the enemy, and that's how they become victorious. In fact, many a times in this course, they lose their life. They lose their life, they die, they martyr themselves. Yet they are victorious because they had not allowed the fear to, they had not allowed the fear to come between their duty right? Their duty towards their nation and the duty towards the family. So this is how what courage is. That they just forgot that they had the fear of the family. Okay, family would be okay. The rest of the people behind, they would see the family. He would not care for the family. This is winning over, this is overcoming that fear. Is that clear? Now you see that Chandrasekhar Azad, the revolutionary, he had taken the pledge that he would not be captured by British government alive. He had promised that he would never allow himself to be caught by British government alive. So when there was the fear, when he was trapped in one such situation in the forest when he had run away, there was the situation that he was surrounded by the British force all around. He knew that he could not escape. So what he did, he shot himself dead. So that is how he had overcome that fear. He had that fear that he would be caught. And once he is caught, they would shoot him, they would kill him, but he never wanted to be killed by them. So how he overcame that fear? He had shot himself dead. I hope you understand how to overcome the fear.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. I've already given you 2, 3 examples to suggest that what it is called. So he learned from these people. He learned from these people. These people, many a times they had been put behind the bars, they had been put in the jail, yet they did not give up. They continued their fight to get freedom. This is what Mahatma Gandhi had done. This is what Patel had done. This is what Nehru had done. This is what many other leaders had done. There had been fear many a times. This would happen, that would happen. They would be put behind the bars. All their activities would be halted. But while sitting in the jail also, they had continued working on their mission. Their spirits were so live, right? Now here another statement which is very, very important and very meaningful, and I hope you would also realize this. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. Now, why this racial government was formed before 1994 in South Africa? Because the whites, they hated blacks. Whites, they hated blacks. Now, the point here is, why do the people hate? What is the reason? So here Nelson Mandela says, no one is born hating another person. He says when a person is born, when the man is born, he does not hate anyone. He does not hate anyone that one is dark, so he would hate. One is Dalit, so he would hate. One is Shudra, so he would hate. Anyway, we don't discriminate on these bases nowadays. Yet, I'm sorry to say, in the remote areas, it is still happening. Right? So no one is born hating another person. When a person is born, he does not know what hate is. He does not hate anything. You see, just as for example, I tell you, a small child, a small child, everything attracts that small child. And he likes everything. Even if he would see a cockroach, he would start playing with that. A small child starts playing with a dog. A small child would start playing with a cat without realizing, without knowing that these animals could be harmful to the child. Why? Because the child has not learned to hate. The child only knows liking, loving. And the day we tell the child, the day we stop the child from playing with the dog, hey, no, this dog is dangerous. No, this cat is dangerous. The day we tell the child this, children, that very day we teach the child to hate or to dislike another thing. Is that clear? That's how the child learns to dislike. Otherwise, a small child likes and loves everything. A small child would see a labor child, would start playing with that child. That child would not realize that he is covered with dust or dirty or his dress is dirty. No, nothing. Unless we tell the child or we just take the child away from that labor child. Is that clear? So this is what he says. No one is born hating another person. The child, when he is born, he does not know what hate is, and he does not hate anyone because of one's color, that one is black or one is white, or one is poor or one is rich, or one is Hindu or Muslim or Christian or Sikh or etc. etc. No. Then how does the child hate? We, the people, teach the child to hate. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Try to understand. People must learn to hate. How do the people learn hate? How does the child learn hate? He learned hate from the parents, from the family. I gave you examples. Any creature would attract the child's attention. The child would look at this, the child would like to play with this, but the elders around would stop the child, would be giving protection, would be extra cautious for the child. And there he develops dislike for something. But the point here is when we can teach the child to hate, don't you think that we should teach the child to love also? And if we teach the child to love, the child would pick up very fast. Why? Because love is a natural instinct the child has. Now you must be thinking that how is it a natural instinct the child has? As I told to you, when the child is born, when the child grows, the child is so innocent, everything around attracts the child. And he likes everything. That's why he is playful. He plays with that. He does not know. He does not know that he has to discriminate or he has to distinguish that this is to be played with and that is to be ignored. No, he does not know that. This is only the human intervention. That is, we the humans teach the child to hate, to dislike. Can't we teach the child to love also? That we don't do. So that's how Nelson Mandela says that hate spreads. Hate spreads, isn't it? Nowadays, when we see the kind of environment in the country, in one part of the country, like somebody says that the particular kind of attire is not allowed in the schools. In another part of the country, they says only one particular community is allowed to have their shops outside the temples. Similarly, many other issues like this. It's really very, very unfortunate. When I look at these things, I really think over what our children are learning when they see this. How can I teach the children that learn to be Indians? Somebody asked me, if anybody asked me about my religion, I would say, sorry, I'm Indian. That is my religion. So don't ask me another question. This is what I tell the people. And this is what actually we should learn. Our nationality is our religion. If we follow that, children, then of course we would never hate anything. We would love and we would spread love. By giving this very statement, Nelson Mandela has tried to convey to the readers that if you want to spread, then you spread love. Don't spread hatred. If you spread love, love would spread faster because love is a natural instinct in the humans. I hope it is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Even in the grimmest times in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits, I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards. Perhaps just for a second, but it was enough to reassure me and keep me going. Yes, this is also something very meaningful. Even in he is giving his own experience. He says, even in the grimmest times, the worst times, the toughest, the most difficult times that he had in prison. If you read about his autobiography, you will learn that in 3 different prisons, time to time, he had been put. He was put in one prison, then for after some time, he was shifted from that prison to another prison. So he had a very difficult time. So he says, even in the toughest time in the prison, when his comrades and I were pushed to our limits, we were pushed to our limits, meaning they had been tortured and humiliated beyond limits. That is excessively when they had been humiliated and harassed and tortured. He said, in the midst of those atrocities also, he would see a glimmer, a hope of humanity in one of the guards. So many guards were there around, and he says that in one of the guards, he could see that the guard was humane. He had some humanity, perhaps just for a second. He said, however, it was for a second. But when he saw that guard, then it was enough for him to confirm, to be sure that the humanity still exists. Humanity still exists. Humanity is still there around. Yes, you know that Shahid Udham Singh, one of the revolutionaries, I hope you people must have heard the name. Okay, Shahid Udham Singh, when he was put behind the bars, when he was about to be sentenced to death, the day he was sentenced to death, a few days before, the guard who was on duty with him, who had been keeping a guard on him, he would keep on crying many a times. He would not say anything to him, but he would look at Shahid Udham Singh and he would cry. Now the point here is, you will say, then why was he giving the duty? Because he was doing duty. He was in British police. He was doing his duty because he was wearing uniform. But at the same time, that human in him pricked his conscience. And he was sad to see Udham Singh, that very soon he would be sentenced to death. So what it means, that it is not so that there is no humanity. Humanity still exists. General Dyer, Jallianwala massacre, you all know very well. General Dyer had killed merciless Indians. It was a complete genocide, right? He had killed. But after that, General Dyer could never have a sound sleep. Not a single day till his death, he had a sound sleep. He didn't want to do it, but he had been ordered by his government to shoot at the site. And he carried out those orders. And in his sleep, many a times he would wake up, because in his sleep he would hear the cries of the people being killed innocently. Innocent people killed by him. So this is what he says, that humanity is there. It is not so that in the midst of atrocities there would be no one human. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. What he means to say, every man does have goodness also, does have a virtue also. And that virtue, that goodness is a flame that burns, that can be hidden, but that cannot be suppressed. That cannot be suppressed, that cannot be removed, that cannot be eliminated, that cannot be extinguished. The man who has a human heart would definitely express his kind gesture whenever he gets an opportunity. Sometimes, even in adversities, if such a man had also to face adverse results, he would be ready to face it. He would be ready to face it. Because his goodness in his heart, that would not allow him to be silent. Right? So this is what he means to say, that we should not spread hatred, we should spread love. Love is natural, the feeling of love is natural, and we all humans have that instinct of love in us. That goodness we all have. So let us share love with each other, not hatred. If we do so, there would be peace on the earth, and there would be no discriminations of any kind. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now here are the questions. Yes. What do the military generals do?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, the question is, what do the military generals do, ma'am, after freedom or before freedom?
Just a minute. What do the military generals do? This is present tense. So certainly after freedom. Okay?
Okay.
Yes.
Military generals saluted to Nelson Mandela,
Mhm.
and how has their attitude changed? Ma'am, before freedom, when military general worked under the British government, they arrested to Nelson Mandela
Mhm.
and prisoned him.
Mhm.
But after freedom, he saluted him and pledged their loyalty.
Right, because now he was the president of a democratically elected government. Right? Okay. Why were two national anthems sung?
To mark the end of apartheid and spread equality among people.
Very good. That is to mark the end of apartheid, right? And to express the equality. Good. How does Mandela describe the systems of government in his country in the first decade? First decade of the 20th century. What kind of government was there?
Ma'am, one of the harshest, most inhuman
Right.
government.
Okay. The harshest, the most inhuman, right? And what kind of government?
Racial.
Racial. Right, Anmol. You see what it says. How does Mandela describe the systems of government? Harshest, the most inhuman, that is right. But these are the descriptions. Okay. So what was the system? It was racial government. in the first decade of the 20th century, there was a racial form of government that was the cruelest, the harshest, and the most inhuman. And in the final decade of the 20th century,
Democratic system of government.
it was completely democratic, non-racial. Okay. Yes. What does courage mean to Mandela?
To Mandela, courage means victory over fear and not absence of fear.
Right. Now here, Gar, you will start your answer with like this. Courage means not the absence of fear, but victory over fear. You started your answer with to Mandela, right? So we never start the answer or a sentence like that. All right? Yes. Otherwise, your answer is correct. Which does he think is natural, to love or to hate?
To love.
To love is natural. That's right. Yes. Would you like to add something to this answer? Yes. You can say that he thinks love is natural because love does not need to be taught. All right? Yes. Now let's see further. In life, every man has twin obligations. Now, in the coming passage, Nelson Mandela, while addressing the people, addressing the readers, what he has tried to convey, he has tried to make them understand their responsibilities, their duties. We have duty towards our family, we have duty towards our community, our society as well. How it is, in life, every man has twin obligations. Obligations, responsibilities, duties, two obligations. Obligations to his family, to his parents, to his wife, and children. This is one responsibility. One duty, that is duty to his family. That counts the parents, wife, and children. And he has an obligation to his people, his community, his country. And the other responsibility we have towards our people, our fellow citizens, our community, the society where we live, society of the people with whom we live, and the country where we live. We have our duties towards them also. And that's very important to understand. In a civil and, in a civil and humane society, each man is able to fulfill those obligations according to his own inclinations and abilities. Now, these very obligations, these very duties, you can perform, you can fulfill according to your own abilities, according to your behavior, according to your temperament. But if you are anywhere, in any corner of the world, in any part of the world you can perform those duties as per your temperament, as per your behavior, as per your abilities. But Mandela says, but in a country like South Africa, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth and color to fulfill both of those obligations. But he says that in a country like South Africa, before 1994, it was impossible for a man of my birth and color. What did he mean by this? Man of my birth and color.
Black.
Ma'am, he was black.
Yes, black. Man of my birth, that he was born in a family of blacks. Color, he was black race. Okay, so man of my birth, black race. right? So he says that if in South Africa you are born in a black family, you are a black, you belong to the black race, then it was difficult for the one to fulfill those two responsibilities. You can neither do your duties towards your family, nor can you fulfill your responsibilities towards your country. In South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being was punished and isolated. A man of color meaning black. In South Africa, those who were blacks, they could not live as human beings. When he says that those who attempted to live as a human being, they were punished and isolated, meaning they could not live like common human beings because they were not treated like humans. They were punished, they were ill-treated, they were isolated, they were segregated. They were segregated from the whites. There was such distinction between the whites and the blacks. In South Africa, a man who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was inevitably ripped from his family. If you are black and if you tried to do something for your community, then you would be penalized. You would be kept away from your family so that you could not give your services, so that you could not do something for your community. Why? Because when you are doing something for your community, it is understood that you are doing for their upliftment. It is being done for their progress, for their prosperity, for their development. But in South Africa, at that time, they never wanted whites to make any progress or white to prosper. So anybody who had tried to give his services to the community, then one would be punished. One would be kept away from his family, from his home, and was forced to live a life apart, a twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. A twilight existence, twilight, dark existence of secrecy. What is the secrecy? Such a person would be put behind the dark prisons, dark cells, secretly, and no one would come to know where one has been put. And then one such person was treated as a rebel. Why he was put behind the dark cells? Because he was considered a rebel. I did not, in the beginning, choose to place my people above my family. He says, initially, I would prefer my family. I would think of my family. I never thought of helping or giving my services to my community. But in attempting to serve my people, I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligations as a son, a brother, a father, and a husband. But he said that later on, when he tried to help the common people, then he realized that he was not allowed to do his duties as a son, a brother, a father, and a husband. Why? Because blacks had no rights and freedoms. They had only restrictions, lots of limitations. So as a result, even to his family, if he had some duties, he could not do. It was such an environment. Is that clear? I thought we would be able to conclude, but sorry, we could not. So next week we will conclude it.